Reverend Jayson Dona, welcome to Profile.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely fascinating story. One of the reasons we're having you at this juncture is because of your new book,
Right.
the author of Fathering Behind Bars,
Right.
but an ordained minister,
Right.
chaplain of the Department of Correctional Services.
Correct.
Runs the correctional services, so we're talking about prisons.
Yeah, the
overall.
prisons overall.
But former dorm manager at Jamaica College.
Right.
You've been co-chair of the Gender Advisory Council,
Right.
master trainer in the World Needs a Father movement, and we talk a little bit about why
Sure.
you're involved in all of these different kinds of movements.
Sure.
Member or chairman rather of the Men of God Against Violence and Abuse
Right.
organization. Former chair of the board of visitors at the Tower Street Adult Correctional Facility, and you're an associate forensic psychologist,
Right.
former teacher as well.
Yes.
All of these roles that we're describing you in terms of those roles. How do you describe yourself?
Somebody who loves people. I just leave it as a servant. Some persons who look at me in terms of a leader, I rather use the term a servant leader. So that's in a nutshell how I look at it.
I know that this new book now, Fathering
Right.
Behind Bars, how
Right.
does that relate to your own life growing up?
Well, I mean, it's a personal experience. Firstly, when I was born, I did not see my biological father around. Strangely, my older brother, had my last name, but I got to understand that my biological father met my mother when she was pregnant with him. And in an effort to give him an identity too, he got my father's last name. But before I was born, my father went to prison, but I didn't know that. So when I asked questions, my mom told me, him did they are foreign, them days, 80s baby, being foreign a big thing. But I saw no good is coming. And then when I was a little older, 7, 8, I asked again, and she told me he was incarcerated. Strangely enough, I never visited him because it was told that I couldn't visit as a child, which I now know that, that's not really the truth. My older sister, by his side, would visit him. Well, it seemed like many times, but it's very few. But he would send message back to me. And that somehow comforted me. Some weird way it affirmed me. And then my mother and other family members would speak positively about my father. But it felt weird because in my little mind, bad people go to prison. But then they're speaking positive things about this man, his character. And so as I grew and I got older and I, taught and went through life, went to the greatest high school in Ush, the greatest high school in Jamaica, Kingston College. And then, that's the trajectory. When I look back, I recognize that the Lord had a plan. And so I began working through the organization, Mogava, to do work in the prison.
So this organization, this
Mogava,
is Men of God
Against Violence and Abuse.
Against Violence and Abuse. And I want to get to that.
Right.
But first, in terms of context, you're saying right there, growing up without that father, although he was trying to keep in touch with you,
right,
in his own way through
right,
siblings.
Right.
But your mother, now, talk a little bit about the role that she had.
Wow, old school mom. She was a hustler, meaning she did what she needed to do to take care of her family. But she spoke positively about him. She had a lot of respect for him. And so she never tried to tarnish how I viewed him. And so, she did what she could. And again, hearing from other persons confirmed that, hey, this guy seemed like he wasn't a bad guy after all.
So she was raising you on her own?
Yes. I mean, there were uncles. Now and then I have a particular uncle who, anytime you see him, is either get a cheese tricks or you're going to get a spanking. So there were those, the village was there and you could pull from the village somewhat. But in terms of there was this void or this yearning for daddy, and that was totally absent. development.
And in addition, also a set of circumstances in which you said you were moving around.
Yes.
So you say Walton Park Road was one place.
Was one place. I spent a lot of time by my aunt, who's now deceased. You know, my aunt Junie, Mountain View, and we just, because my mom would travel for short periods to Curacao or those places to buy and sell, until about age 11 she went overseas and started to work over there, and I didn't see her until 11 years later. I had to move around a lot with my older brother Jermaine, and that created some amount of instability. Mark you, it's not like now where we can FaceTime a loved one overseas or real time. Then if she wanted to talk to us, it was next week go down to Miss Jane, forget a phone call, or you'll get a little letter with a $10 US in it or something like that. And so there, we were just being raised around people who, you know, it's their job, you're bored, you catch. And so, you know, that brought some exposure, but thankfully we weren't drawn into any form of exposure.
So this is the context of growing up. So the mother who is trying to make a living,
Right.
also speaking well of your father who is incarcerated, still trying to get in touch with
Right,
you. And
right.
then he emerges from prison when you're roughly around 12.
Yeah.
How do you meet him?
I remember it was about July or August 1994. The October would be that I was going to be 13. I just passed common entrance. You know about common entrance, right? You know, passed for common entrance, and off Wavell Avenue, Walton Park. You know, what we did then during summer, Chinese skip, you know, dandy shandy, you name it. And I saw this man peep over the fence. And him say, "Youth, you know Jayson?" "Yeah, I'm Jayson." The next thing I knew, this man, I don't know if him jumped the fence or him walked through just embracing me and kissing me. Now, a range of emotions came rushing. I was scared. I was happy.
So you never see before that?
Never seen before. I didn't know he was coming out. None of those things. And then, of course, my older brother at the time, you know, he was very skeptical. "Jayson, you sure? Maybe he's a stranger." But it was confirmed that he was my father. And, you know, thereafter, he tried his best to fill the void. Never complained about being incarcerated. You know, work, you know, it goes as an ex-con. Weren't working anymore, but he tried his best. Always ended a conversation with me, "I love you." And also to my brother, "I love you." Yeah, very, very, very interested.
All right, and at the same time, your story gets a little bit more complicated because your mother is also trying to make a living, and so she goes abroad, make a living not just for her, but for her family.
Yeah.
So she goes abroad. But I want to talk a little bit about the sort of impact of this set of circumstances, but we have to take our first break on Profile. My guest today is ordained minister, he's an author, Reverend Jayson Dona. I'll be back with you after these messages.